We've been expecting this address over the last day because of the escalation of the paste pathogen and some of the failure of the National Guard troops to move into the area that were needed to clear out the infected individuals. And then it was evident that they weren't able to clear out any location effectively. The truth is, people are starting to see this illness as a serious condition. It quickly became the main talking point at election numbers. We were told to add it in okay, it appears the speaker is coming onto the lectern. Here's the press conference on PACE.
I'd like to thank everyone that's come out for this press conference. I know many of you have been waiting for us to address this growing illness. For the record, my name is Terry Pearson, Civil Defense, and I have with me Major Robert Hodge of U.S. AMRAID, Nicholas Black of CDC, and Aldo Sauer, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, as well as other members of the medical and scientific community who represented the task force that we hastily put together to combat this illness. The first question that is undoubtedly on everyone's mind is, why has it taken us so long to address the illness and how we plan to combat it? Simply put, we needed to research the illness and make sure that no rash action was being taken to combat it. We needed to understand its nature. The illness is called pathogenic ataxic cerebrovascular encephalopathy disease, or PACE for short. The illness is aggressive and chaotic, and once a person is infected by it, they can transition into its latent form from within minutes to hours and even days. So in our early research, we believed we had time, but we quickly realized that was not the case. In our research, it came to our attention that Steve Scholzman, a medical doctor from Mass General Harvard Medical, discovered the illness a year prior, and he called it ataxic neurodegenerative satiety deficiency syndrome. This was not brought to our attention until well after the first outbreak, but it did allow us to get ahead of the information in helping us combat the illness, so we wanted to thank him for his work. But what does this illness do? Simply put, it takes over the body of the person it affects, changes their physiology to work for the illness. We were quickly able to work on a blood test that measures the level of infection in the body and tell if the person is infected. But we need to make it clear that it uses the body against itself, similarly to how cancer would metastasize, or like HIV. Which means everyone has a metabolism to promote the illness. So any test beyond our original blood test would actually test positive. So those tests needed to be removed from our equation. We have not discovered the underlying propagation method, such as HIV is to AIDS, and we'll need further research to do that. Our task force is hard at work and working with various establishments. It's important to note that it is illegal to study this pathogen outside approved channels. To make it clear, at this time we are nowhere near development of a vaccine, a treatment, or a cure, and we have never made a public statement to the contrary. Let me make that clear. Once you acquire the illness, it is, in effect, 100% fatal. Unfortunately, the infected individual does not die, but becomes something similar to those infected by transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, or as some may call it, mad cow disease. Truly, these illnesses have a lot in common. Symptoms include rapid dementia, difficulty walking or standing, jerking muscular movements, hallucinations, muscle stiffness, confusion, extreme fatigue, and slowly losing your ability to speak. The associated fever has been called oppressive and extreme. It's clear that this illness attacks the brain and its functionality at a rapid rate. What was not reported in the past was that the metabolism of the subject begins to slow at an incredible rate, and people have reported it as having stopped before the person goes into the full throes of the illness, or has, many have called it, a snap or a turn. At this point, the individual is no longer in control of their faculties and attack individuals around them and attempt to consume any living being they come into contact with. At this point, they cannot be reasoned with. Their higher brain functions no longer function, and effective brain death has occurred. Although the base functionality of the brain still performs its duties. We believe this attack of the ill can be twofold. One, the basic instinct is to feed, which can keep the body alive. But we believe the illness taps into the areas as a primary way to transmit the illness. These individuals are to be considered extremely dangerous and require professional assistance to dispatch. They will no longer feel pain, can function with incredible wounds, and cannot be reasoned with. These are not your loved ones, your friends, or neighbors anymore. For lack of a better term, they are mindless, consuming automatons. Unfortunately, we are seeing individuals who have not been bitten or attacked, showing they have snapped. It's still possible that there are transmissions from food sources, insect bites, or another source we aren't aware of. So it's important that if you show signs of the illness, that you separate yourself from anyone and contact emergency services immediately. After working with our staff here and trying our best to take action, such as local police, fire, and emergency services, which included, of course, National Guard troops, that we've been unsuccessful in our efforts, and it could be assumed that due to rash actions from local officials could have resulted in a great loss of life, one which we cannot at this time truly measure. To exacerbate this problem, even after areas like China and Russia shut down their borders, followed by UK, France, and Germany incorporating extensive approval of travel, that they are all now suffering from the same problem that we face in the US. It's possible now that the illness could have started first in China or possibly even Korea. We spoke with Seoul this morning and Pyongyang is no longer responding. Just before this meeting, we've heard that individuals in that area are said to be transmitting messages via social media instructing they require assistance. Faced with models that could result in not millions but billions of lives lost worldwide, we have now recommended a federal quarantine. We also want to implement a program for required workers so that they can maintain power, internet, and communication to be maintained. The President has declared an executive order to enact the National Guard in every state to work directly with state and local officials to mitigate the possible spread and take any additional action necessary. Commanders in those regions received their action package mere moments ago and should already be mobilizing an attempt to secure federal buildings and provide additional support where available to hospitals. Unfortunately, hospitals at this time are already experiencing attacks from within their wards from individuals, and although we have instructed on an additional protocol to any individual entering a hospital, we assume that those directives may already be too late. This will result in severe shortages of staff. So I ask now publicly to any hospital still functioning to merge together your efforts. This is a dire illness that requires your best efforts. Move staff to more centralized locations and allow National Guard assistance. Test anyone that comes to your location, even if they are not showing signs of illness. I must make it clear that this will be a global effort. It will require action from every citizen, every member of staff. All of us need to come together to combat this illness. We've provided an online location that will be handed out to televisions and social media sources to direct people for instructions on what to look for, what to avoid, and how to act if they come in contact with someone who is sick. What was once a localized illness is now a global one, and we need to treat it as such. We will be setting up an emergency broadcast to be independent and work with news stations as well to transmit information and continue to update you on what is happening and what you can do. Together we will beat this. Well, let's move to the questions. We did have a question about Pittsburgh and some family members. Unfortunately, we've not been made aware of Pittsburgh's current situation. We were aware that some residents moved back and have once again encountered victims of the pathogen, and others have left. It's further come to our attention that victims have been seen in the wooded areas around the cities, and that if you do get in touch with them, just quickly tell them to quarantine. Anything else, you can just contact those local officials if you can to find out any more information. We did receive a question regarding Rhode Island. We were made aware of an outbreak on the southern part of the state that resulted from an attack on a cruise ship. We even heard that the Block Island may have serious issues. We're made aware that the governor did receive his action package and has dispatched National Guard as well as state police to deal with that situation. Unfortunately, we are receiving sightings of victims from all over the U.S., so you'll need to keep in touch with those local officials and to report on the results of their efforts. A question: if we plan to request assistance from PMC, or for those that don't know, that's private military, we do have a great deal of contracts that have already been extended and members dispatched to certain areas where they are needed for additional security. If you are a member of one of these organizations or are not currently active, we would advise you to contact your team and find out if they have any directives. There's been a lot of stuff that went out in the last probably about 10 hours that they could probably use additional services, so if you have that available, that's good. But that's about all we can release regarding that. Hey, let me make it clear though that we are not promoting sheriffs or police commanders to ask for private militias for assistance. Trained, contracted individuals is another thing entirely, and would be advisable with a clear ROE, such as protecting hospitals, power companies, and yes, that's a resource we would happily engage. Someone asked why the turn in how we approach the illness. So there was some questions about that we had changed our methodology, or that we were going one way and now it seemed that we were attacking things in a completely different direction with the narrative that we're stating here. It's true, originally this was a localized illness that affected a few individuals, and we reacted accordingly at the time. It was also clear that local city and state officials were overacting on the illness and making what we would call rash decisions. Obviously, we're not going to bring anyone specifically to bear on that. There were many sources, both televised and otherwise, that gave us question about what was going on. The media also sent out some false information that was correlated with federal response, and it said to say it wasn't true. And if those things have cost people's lives. And the hope is that we're doing this right now to clear that up. We effectively have never changed our narrative on this, but there are obviously other sources of information that have claimed that they represent the federal government or our government activities or the task force activities in general, and you have to look at that according to the information you receive. Obviously, some people have been reporting accurately, but there have been some sources that I think are seeing this as a moment to fuel some sort of viral coverage that can direct people to their areas, and they want to address things like hyperbole, and that's just what's going to happen. So you're going to have to take all the information and verify it, make sure that you are getting the right information. A question asked if the regular troops like Army, Navy, Marines, or Air Force will be deployed. Let me make that clear. That requires an act of Congress, and it does not appear that will be an avenue that Congress will pursue at this time. Congress has said that it isn't needed, and I think that it's more the fear of enacting the perception of martial law. And I think that if we do put that in motion, that a martial law will be the next logical step, and I do think there are people that are pushing back based on that. So the idea of some sort of military force working on domestic soil should be considered the very last action that we take if necessary. And I think with what's been done so far, and given the power of the citizens to act in their defense, that we should be able to get ahead of this illness, giving them the resources, the proper resources, I might add, to be able to get ahead of this. That's what's poignant right now and what we need to do. And until then, military forces are assisting in any way they can, obviously. So we don't want to say that there are no military forces involved in what's going on. Obviously, we have an individual right behind me who has been putting a great deal of work in helping us do research, and has been kind of he's been been one of the forefront leaders, getting us information and giving us the best possible so that we can act accordingly. So yes, we are working with them, and obviously those individuals will be working with National Guard troops, and we suggest National Guard tap into their military resources should they need them. So although it's highly advisable, the idea of tanks and artillery driving down the street is just, it's not one of those things we're willing to put on the table right now. A question regarding if this was an engineered virus. We don't know anything about that at this time, but it doesn't appear so. Right now, you have to understand the goal at this time is mitigation of the illness. It's keeping it under control and making sure that we can understand, how it is propagated, how people are getting sick, what to do with someone if they get sick. The idea of storage in the future is going to be a major concern, and there's a lot of legal battles that we're going to have to face in the future here. So we're going to make some suggestions, and just because we're making those suggestions doesn't mean legally they're going to be coming into play in the next 5-6 hours. So that's where we really are asking for people's help in that. And then we can determine any other information as we move ahead. Also, I have to point out that we don't know if this is a virus, a bacteria. Somebody's even said mold of that. We don't know where that is or what the underlying cause is, and that's something that, especially with the virility, if you will, of the illness and how easy it is to catch, we need to make sure that everybody who is researching that is doing so in a safe and effective manner, and we are working with other countries to make sure that that happens. A question is military, National Guard, etc. activity. Will things change about how they deal with this situation? We're going to see a lot more helping added federally to the states. We've known that the president is quickly wanting to unlock and take any executive orders he can to make sure that any resources available to the state is made available to them. Obviously, there are many national emergencies that have been put into place right now, state emergencies, and those funds have been unlocked to help. So yeah, the point is to help people defend from the illness so that they don't get it, and put any resources in that area that they can. So with this next one, we've seen a bunch of questions, and I'm just going to say it, they're asking if these are zombies. And I'm going to make this clear that these are not fantasies. This is not some story that's being written up. These are real infected individuals, and to minimize them into something from a movie is, I'm going to say, insulting, to say the least. The wording has been removed from our lexicon as policy for a reason, and yes, internally there have been people that have used terms like zombies and ghouls, especially with media, that have really even come into our area, and we've made sure that discontinues, and we're going to ask you guys to do the same. It's simple misinformation, and it's why we have to add fact checkers to articles now to make sure that dehumanizing these individuals helps nobody. So let's all come back to reality and deal with the situation in a rational, civil manner so we can focus on what's important. And that brings me to the next, and this is a huge question: what legal protections or immunities will the DOJ extend to people who are misidentifying someone as a victim of the illness? Let's be clear, even if people aren't misidentifying people, there are individuals out there who are actively hunting sick people and engaging them, and it has resulted in death, and we don't know the numbers of that. But the simple answer is, anyone being protected from that? The simple answer is no. There are no protections, and there never will be. These are not ghouls, they're not undead, they're not any of that. If you shoot and kill a person who is walking around, it is considered murder. If you kill multiple people, you are considered a serial killer, and in some cases, that will be assumed as first-degree murder. So if you have any questions about that, I'm going to suggest to consult a lawyer about that. But there will never be any reward. There will be no collection for collecting of heads. This isn't the Wild West. Thankfully, we've moved well beyond that. But I'm going to leave that right there, because I just think it's something that if that's what we're addressing right now, I think we have a bigger concern than even the illness. So I don't want to start having to treat the human condition. So let's be bigger than that. To also add to that, we did hear about what was called an alpha team in California. So something that was endorsed by a governor. And these teams themselves were commissioned by the governor to eradicate. They said eradicate sick people. That was a vicious rumor, and those individuals were sent to clear out homeless shelters and provide medical care. And during one of their moves, one of the PMC members were forced to defend themselves. That has happened multiple times. We have a situation here where we're dealing with people who are highly dangerous, highly contaminated, and that requires some people, if things get out of hand, to defend themselves. And there was one where they shot someone. It was proven that they were sick, and there was a video that went viral. But I can assure you their mission was completely humanitarian. I was under the impression last that they were able to accomplish their goal. Whether that has undone itself, it has happened in many areas. That's something that we'll address in the future. So we're going to end the press conference there. I want to thank everybody that came out for it. We want to appreciate those out there that are supporting this cause and helping every person that you relay information about this is going to be a life that you save. So make sure you get in touch with people. Go to the website, get your action packages, make sure that you're aware that there are things that can help other people out. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in. That will be the end of our press conference this afternoon. We will keep in touch with you in the future as things evolve. And remember, pay attention to that new channel as it comes out. Thank you very much.